Happy Wednesday, 5th grade. I know you're wondering, why would we be so happy if it's barely Wednesday? Well, the good thing is today, or this week, is another 4-day week. That means Friday there will not be a lesson posted, which means today is your last lesson of the week. Woohoo! All right, so we are going to go ahead and get started on today's lesson. If you have not done Mondays, please go do that first. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is something that you should be very familiar with. We learned it at the very beginning of the school year. However, we talk about it every single time we read a story, and that is point of view, whether the story is being told in first person or in third person. So I want you to go ahead and open up your books to page 246. So just to refresh your memory a little bit, point of view is the perspective from which a story is being told. So in other words, is the narrator inside the story, or are they outside the story, right? And so we've talked about first person and third person. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to pause the video and I want you to take some time to read through it. I know that it's a little bit lengthy, but I really need you to read it so that you can refresh your memory. So if you need to chunk it up, then chunk it up, but I need you to make sure you read the whole page. Now that you took some time to read that, I want to point out a few things. So make sure that you have your highlighter with you, or if you don't have a highlighter, you can simply just underline these things. But one thing I want to point out to you is in that first paragraph there. And it says, first of all, that there's first person and third person, okay? And that authors choose to use first or third person based on how they want to reveal the thoughts, feelings, motivations, and reactions of characters to events. Okay, the next thing I want you to pay attention to is these bullet points here. It says that when a story is told from first person point of view, then it allows the narrator to share his or her thoughts or feelings directly with the reader. So you would hear a lot of I, me, we, us, okay? And if it's third person, that means that the narrator is not part of the story, right? They're outside the story. And it allows the narrator to explain the character's thoughts and feelings. And you hear a lot of he, she, they. The next thing I want you to pay attention to is the paragraph that follows that talks about, or I'll just read it. It says, authors also add meaning and interest to their stories by carefully choosing language, such as words, phrases, and sentence types to express their thoughts and ideas using a personal style. This language contributes, meaning adds, to the voice the author is intending to express. Okay? So I want you to pay attention to this here, because it gives us a sample sentence. It gives us the point of view. So this would be an example of third person, but it's also explaining the voice. So these sentences use a casual, authentic voice. The words "old," "shuffled," "no sir," and "mind fixed" contribute to the voice. Whereas this one right here is first person, right? We see I, my. They're telling me here that these sentences create fast-paced action that contributes to a feeling of tension. So basically here they're telling me that it's casual, relaxed, authentic, and real. Here it's quick, has a lot of action, and has tension. Okay, so again, the author adds certain words or phrases or sentences to contribute to the voice of what he or she is trying to express, okay? So as you're reading today's story, I want you to think of these 3 questions. Number 1, from what point of view is the story told? So if it's first person or third person. Now, if it's third person, we know that the narrator is outside the story. But if it's first person, the narrator is inside the story. However, you can go even deeper. Okay, it's first person, right? But say that there are 3 or 4 characters in the story. Then you have to figure out who is actually telling the story. Yeah, we know it's first person. Or we know it could be first person, but you don't know, or you need to figure out whose perspective is it being told from, okay? Number 2, what language does the author use to create voice? And then number 3, how does the point of view and language, so how does number 1 and number 2 used by the author add meaning and interest to the story? So why would they tell the story in first person, or why would they tell the story in third person? All right, so take a look at your story on page 247. Go ahead and take a moment to write down RNAG, RQPC, and NAG at the bottom. I want you to pay attention to what I wrote at the bottom. Okay, so we already know that when we're identifying the in part of NAG, that we're saying it's either first person or third person, right? We've been doing this all year long. So I want you to answer that still. Is it first person or third person? However, I'm going to go even deeper now today, and I'm going to say if it is first person, if you choose first person, who is telling the story? Which character is telling the story? So if it is first person, underneath narrator, I want you to also write down who is telling the story. So now I want you to go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to complete R, NAG, R. Remember, for in, you are telling me not only is it first or third, but if you do choose first, which character is telling the story. Now that you've completed RNAG-R, make sure that you check it off, and then we're going to get started on the questions on page 248. Let's take a look at number 1. Number 1 is asking, who is telling this story? So if you completed narrator the way I told you to, the in part of NAG, then this question should be very, very simple. You should have identified if it was first person or third person, and you should have written down who was telling the story if it was first person. Okay, so go back, and your proof would be the in part of NAG. All right, let's take a look at number 2. Number 2 is asking, how does the point of view affect the text? So how does the point of view affect the story? Okay, so think about who is telling the story, from whose perspective is the story being told, and based off of that, how does that affect the story? What does it help us better understand? All right, and our last one, number 3, the language in paragraph 6 contributes to the voice that can be best described as. So they're telling me paragraph 6, but they're specifically asking about the language and how that contributes to the voice. So one thing we need to do is we need to automatically go back and we need to reread paragraph 6 before we even try to answer this question. So pause the video, go back and reread paragraph 6. Now that you reread paragraph 6, I want us to take a look at these answer choices. They're all one word, right? We have A, worried, B, celebratory, C, humble, and D, clever. Maybe we know what worried means, but say I don't know what B, C, and D mean. What should I do?
Overtime. More money per hour. Disgusting word.
We should definitely do what Mr. Krabs did when he didn't know what overtime meant. You need to look it up, okay? You cannot get the correct answer if you don't know what these words mean. Once you see the definition, if you see that it doesn't make any sense, run away like Mr. Krabs. Not literally, but you know what I mean. So you're gonna look up these words before you try answering the question, okay? So look up any of the ones that you are not 100% positive about, and then tell me which one of those best describes paragraph 6, or the voice in paragraph 6. Okay, now we can go ahead and check off Q and P. Make sure that you do see the last part, and then we will be done with today's lesson. All right, once you're done, make sure that you click on the link below and you submit your answers on quizzes. There will not be any lesson uploaded on Friday because it is a school holiday. However, for those of you who are still behind, I would take the next few days, Thursday, Friday, and the weekend to make sure that you catch up, because remember, we are taking grades and we are taking attendance. I appreciate those of you who have been keeping up. I hope that you all have a wonderful 3-day weekend, and I will see you Monday.
Good morning, guys. Happy Wednesday. I hope that you're having a great short week. Now remember, today is the very last lesson of the week, and then we'll follow up again on Monday. What I'm going to ask you to do today is to watch a video. Now I need you paying close attention because you will see some of the examples from the video in your quizzes today. Your video is going to take several different animals and compare their structural adaptations and the use or the function of those adaptations. Now remember, on Friday or Monday, we talked about how the function is kind of the behavioral piece. So for example, a duck has webbed feet. Now this is the structural adaptation, but these webbed feet allow them to swim well in water. So this is the function, the use, the behavior that the duck has. So you're gonna see a couple different examples in the video. Again, you really need to pay attention because you will be asked questions specifically about these examples, but also you'll be asked about some other animals that you're just gonna have to think about what you know about that animal to help you answer the question. I hope that you have a wonderful long weekend, and we will see you again on Monday.
Good morning, guys. How is everyone doing? Hope everyone is well and getting your work done. Okay, today for Wednesday, you're gonna watch a video. Okay, you're gonna watch a video about the structures and functions of two similar animals, but they're gonna have their structures are gonna be a little different. Okay, van a ver un video de dos animales que son bien casi iguales de tamaño, pero las estructuras y las funciones van a ser diferentes. Okay? Then you're going to take a quiz on quizzes. 4 questions. Luego van a tomar una prueba que nomás solamente tiene 4 preguntas. Okay? So Ms. Broberg can speak first, then myself, then you're going to watch the video and then take the quiz. Okay? Have a good day.
Here is an Arctic fox, and here is the fennec fox. They are both foxes, yet they are not quite the same. Let's understand why. Look at how the fur coat of the fennec fox matches the color of the desert sand. Similarly, the fur coat of the Arctic fox matches the white snow. How does a body structure, such as the color of the fur coat, help them survive in their environment? This structure helps them to blend in easily with their surroundings. This blending, called camouflage, helps them to hide from their enemies or their prey. Let's now compare the structure of the ears of these two foxes. Why is there a difference in the size of their ears? One function of the large, pointed ears of the fennec fox is to let out excess body heat and help it stay cool in the hot desert. On the other hand, one function of the small, rounded ears of the Arctic fox is to conserve heat in the cold weather and help the fox to stay warm. The Arctic fox can move easily in the cold snow because of its hairy foot pads. The fennec fox also has similar foot pads to help it walk easily on the desert sand. Here's another set of similar organisms. The jackrabbit lives in the Sonoran Desert, while the snowshoe hare lives in the snow-clad mountains of Canada. What differences can you spot between these two organism structures and their functions? The jackrabbit has long, powerful hind legs to jump far and escape from its predators in the vast desert. The snowshoe hare, on the other hand, is perfectly built for traveling through snow because of its wide, furry feet and shorter hind legs. As winter sets in, the snowshoe hare gears up with a brand new coat that matches its surroundings. One function of the fur coat as it turns completely white is to protect it from predators. One function of the jackrabbit's brown fur is to help it blend in with its sandy surroundings. Today, we learned that similar organisms inhabiting different environments have different structures and functions. These structures and their functions increase their chances of survival in their environment.
All right, guys, either find Miss Dribada's link or Miss Broberg's link to take your quizzes. I hope that you have a wonderful, restful weekend. Good job today.
Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're going to continue percentages. I am going to play a raw video, and I'm going to do that really annoying thing where I would stop the video and then speak a lot, just because I want to make sure that you guys understand what's going on. Those of you that got 100 or close to 100, like if you just missed one question on last week's test, this week, if you do the same thing, you're going to have the opportunity to win something really, really cool next week. So just keep up the good work. And for those of you that may have fallen short, just keep up. You never know what's going to happen. Just try your best, and let's go and get started. So here's a review or a recap on percentages, the things that we learned on Monday. All right, so what we learned last week is that when we're talking about percentages, we're talking about fractions. What would the fraction look like if it was out of 100? So I showed you guys that if you have a half, that you get it to 50%, because if this half was out of 100, the half would be 50. So 50 out of the 100 is equivalent to 1/2, so it's 50%. Make sure you put the percentage sign on this side. I also gave you a couple of examples. For example, I gave you a fourth. If the fourth was out of 100, what would be that percentage? So we took the 100 and we divided into fourths. And what we got was 25. So 25 is over 100 is equivalent to a fourth. That's why a fourth is 25%. All right, so I'm going to show you the math antics videos on percentages because I think he does a very good job of explaining it. And I just want to reinforce what we were talking about.
Hi, welcome to Math Antics. In our first video about percents, we learned that a percent is just a special fraction that always has 100 as the bottom number. So that's simple enough, but it brings up a very important question. If a percent always has 100 as the bottom number, then how can we use percents in situations that don't involve 100 things?
And so that's why we do the algorithm of dividing, because if you have a fifth and you're trying to convert that fifth into a percentage, and you know that a percentage is out of 100, then what you need to do is you need to break that 100, that denominator, into 5 parts. That's going to give you the fraction or the percentage that's the value of 1/5 in 100 parts. So for example, I'm going to take my 100 and I'm going to divide it into 5 parts. Okay, 0 on top, 0 on the bottom. I'm going to do this really, really fast because you've already done this. 5, 10, 1, 2. You can't break 0 into 5 parts. That's just 0. 20%. This two things are equivalent, but this is out of 5 parts and this is out of 100 parts. This is what percentage is if it was out of 100 parts. That's why you can just rewrite this as 20%. Look, if you want to think about it this way, you see how a percentage sign has 2 circles? Think about that being the signage or the symbolic 2 zeros for the 100. And this line in the middle could be like your fraction if you divided it into 100.
Like if you scored 90% on a test, but the test only had 50 questions on it. 90% means 90 out of 100, but how can you get 90 questions right if there's only 50 on the test?
So this is what I was saying on the last video, that percentage is more of a value. So the 90% is the value of the questions that you got right on the test. And the actual quantity, like the amount of questions that you answered correctly, that's different. It's not going to look like a 9-0 because that's the quantity and the value is in percentage. So look, this is Rob's test, 90%. So 90 out of 100, that's what percentage means. So I drew 2 models right here, one representing the value and one representing more of the quantity, because this is the amount of questions that are actually on the test and this is the percentage out of 100. So 90% looks like a part out of 100, and out of 50, what would that quantity be if that's the value, 90%. So what you would have to do here is you would have to find the equivalent fraction to 90 over 100. Now look at how would you get 50 into 100? You would break it up twice, right? You would go 50 and after that comes 100. There it is. So it would take you 2 times to get there. So you would multiply 50 times 2 to get 100. Now, if you're going backwards and you know that it's times 2, but you don't know what you multiplied, so you have to do the opposite of multiplication. So you divide 90 divided by 2, which is 45. So 45 out of the 50 questions is your quantity. 45 out of 50, it's 90%. This you don't have to worry too much about because we're going to be doing this next week a little bit more. I just want you guys to see the difference between the value and the quantity.
Your friend says that he'll give you 50% of his candy bar. 50% means 50 out of 100, but how can he give you 50% if he doesn't have 100 candy bars? He's only got 1. Or how about when you're talking about things bigger than 100? Like if you hear on the news that 65% of Americans like watching football. 65% is 65 out of 100, but I'm pretty sure there's more than 100 Americans. The fact is that percents are used all the time to describe situations where the total involved is either more or less than 100. So how does that all work? Well, the key to understanding how percents can be used in all these situations is to realize that percents are equivalent fractions. You might already know that equivalent fractions are fractions that represent the same amount or value, but they do it with different top and bottom numbers. A simple example of equivalent fractions is 1 over 2 and 2 over 4. These fractions both represent the same value, 1/2.
So you keep hearing Rob saying the word value. That's because fractions and percentages are just a value of something, a value of a whole. And the percentage is specifically out of 100. So all you have to do is this. This is, if you didn't understand anything up to this part, just think about it this way. If you see a fraction, 1/4, right? The story is being told in fourths. If you're trying to find the percentage, you're gonna try to break 100, because a percentage is out of 100, into 4 parts, and look at one of those parts. What is the value of that 1/4? And what is that value of that 1/4 if it was out of 100? I forgot to mention that part.
100 because 50 is half of 100. But as you learned in the last video, 50 over 100 is a percent. And that's why 50% of a candy bar is the same as half of a candy bar.
Now, do you see that 50% doesn't literally mean 50 out of 100 parts of a candy bar? It means half of the candy bar. That half, that 50%, those are values of the candy bar. Whatever the candy bar is, in half. 50% means a half. Those are values. Now, the candy bar, the actual quantity of how much candy you get, that depends on how much candy bar you got. Okay, so today we're going to be looking at some things besides unit fractions. So the unit fractions is when the numerator is 1, right? But what if you have a different numerator? What if you have 2 out of 2? What is this called, guys? I hope this came back to you. This is a whole fraction, right? So this is 1 whole. 1 whole is literally 100%, right? You have the whole thing. How do we get 2 halves to look like 100%? Well, if we know that 1/2 equals 50%, right? If you have 2 of them, you have 50% plus 50%, which equals 100%. I went through that pretty fast, but that's basically what's going on. So let me show you the model of that. If you have 1/2, right? If it's out of 100 and you were to divide 100, into 2, you would get 50. But what if you have 2 of those? So you would divide another 100 and you would get another 50. So how many percents do you have if you have 2 halves? You have a 50 here and a 50 here. That equals 100%. Putting that together, it's 2 out of 2. Now the division changes. Remember that before we would just divide 100 into 2 because we had 1 part into 2. Well, now we have 2 parts into 2. So you have 2 models being represented. So 200s broken up into halves. So broken up into 2. So now we have 200s because the numerator is now 2. So the numerator changes how many hundreds you're dividing. Remember that we're talking about values. So you're going to break them into 2. You broke both of the hundreds into 2. This was broken up into 2. This was broken up into 2. So this is the shortcut. Okay, 2 and 2, that's 1. 1 times 2 is 2. You're going to get 0 over here, 0 over here, 0 again, 0 in the bottom. And what did you guys get? Look, there's the 100. 100%. So basically, when your numerator is anything else than 1, then you have more hundreds, you have more parts, you have more percentages besides that 1 part. It was when it was a unit fraction, it was just 100. This is 200 divided by 2, which is 100%. 2 out of 2 equals 1 whole. 1 whole is the whole thing, 100%. Okay, we're going to do a couple together. This is your practice before your quiz. Remember, you have a quiz today, okay? Number 1, I want you guys to do 1/4 into a percentage. Number 2 is going to be 2/4 into a percentage. Number 3 is going to be 3/4. Number 4 is going to be 1/5. Number 5 is going to be 2/5. Number 6 is going to be 3/5 into a percentage. All right, let's look at 1/4. It is a unit fraction, so you're only going to take one part of the 4. So if this was 100 and I broke it up into 4 parts, what would one part be? Well, I'm going to take my 100. I'm going to divide it into 4. 0 on top, 0 on the bottom. 4, 8. 10 minus 8 is 2. Bring down to 20. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. That's going to be 5. That's going to be 20. Nothing left over. This one's 25%. Okay, now let's look at this one. 2/4. That's just not 100. Not one out of every 100. It's 2 out of the 4. So you're looking at this one and this one. I'm going to do the model. Remember that this is the value. This is not the actual quantity. So this is 1/4. But we don't have just 1/4, right? We have 2/4. So this is another 100. 1/4 and 1/4. That is the value. So instead of doing this one by one, what if we just put it together? What if it was 200 divided into 4? 2 into 4, nothing. It's going to be 2. Bring down the 24, 8, 12, 16, 20. It's going to be 5. 5 times 4 is 20. Bring down the 0. Nothing. 0. There it is. 2/4 equals 50%. Now let's look at 3/4. I'm kind of running out of room, guys. I'm so sorry, but I'm just gonna, push along. 3/4. So this was 2/4. So what do you think another one's going to look like? It's going to look like this. This would be out of 100. That's 1/4. 200. That is 2/4. This is 3/4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide 100, 200, 300 into 4. 300 into 4, because it's 3/4. So it's going to be 0 on top, 0 on the bottom. Go ahead and finish this one on your own. So I hope you got 75%. This is my work. All right, I'm actually going to move on to another page because this got way too close for comfort. So I'm going to rewrite 4, 5, and 6 on this page. All right, here we go. Let's do 1/5. So this is a unit fraction. This one's the easy one. If this were 5 parts, 1 out of 5, it was 100. So you're going to take just 100, one part, and divide it into 5. Now look at number 2. Is it a unit fraction or is it more than 1? Yep, there's more than 1. So it's going to be 2/5. So you're going to take 1/5 and 1/5 out of 100. So you're going to take 200s and break them up into 5 parts. That's going to give you your percentage. Number 6. It's not just 1/5 or 2/5, it's 3/5. So you're going to take 1/5 out of 100. 2 fifths out of 100. 3 fifths out of 100. So you're going to take 300, because it's 3 fifths, and divide it into 5 parts. It's going to give you your answer. Okay, pause the video right here and try to solve for 4, 5, and 6 on your own. After you solve 4, 5, and 6 on your own, play the video again, because I'm going to actually give you the answers. I know there's no way for me to force you to stop the video without showing you the answers first, but I would suggest you follow these directions, because you're gonna have a quiz, and on the quiz you're gonna have to do it on your own, and I'm not gonna give you the answers. So try to solve those without seeing the answers first, and then play the video. All right, here are your answers. For number 4, 1/5 equals 20%. So you just take 100 and break it up into 5 parts. It's going to be 20%. 2 fifths is 200s broken up into 5 parts. So it's 200s broken up into 5 parts. That is 40%. 3 fifths is 300s broken up into 5 parts. So you have 60%. These are your answers for 4, 5, and 6. Go ahead and take the quiz. There's no school on Friday, so you guys don't have anything to do. You have today and tomorrow to watch this video. I'm also going to put the link below to the whole math antics video. And good luck, guys. For those of you that are killing the quizzes, there's a prize coming for you, I promise. Okay, so just be patient. All right, see you guys later.
Good morning, guys. Buenos dias. Okay, today you're going to have 2 things to do in math. You're going to have your UPSI, which you're going to have 3 problems, 2-word problems in an order of operations, and I wrote down the steps underneath the problem of order of operation for you to do. Para el UPSI van a tener 3 problemas, 2 problemas de palabras y una orden de operaciones. Y las órdenes ya están con cada paso abajo del problema. La manito que me la resuelven así. Then you're going to be doing some conversions from fractions to percentages, just like we did on Monday. So this is going to be a little different, in which we don't have a numerator of 1. You're going to have a numerator greater than 1, but it's the same process. Okay, you're going to be dividing, and I'm going to show you exactly what to do, so follow the steps. Okay, guys, here's your UPSI for Wednesday, April 22nd. I'm not going to read you the problem. I think I've already read problems for you, but here they are. There's the first one, San Antonio Rodeo. Here's your order of operations. And there are your operations right there at the bottom. That tells you exactly which operation you got to do first. And then here's your third problem in your UPSI, where you're baking pies and how many people will be able to share your pies. Okay, so make sure you work that out on one sheet of paper and write the date on there. Okay, here's your lesson for today, for Wednesday. Like I said, we're going to be converting fractions to percentages. So here's the first one, 3/4. Remember, like on Monday, we put our numerator inside our house and we added 2 zeros because we're dividing by 100. Well, this you're adding 2 zeros, and whatever you have there, that's what you're going to be dividing by. So I'm going to have 4 into 300. 4 goes into 30 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28. Subtract this 2. Bring down the zeros. 24 into 20 is 5. 5 times 4 is 20. And 0. So my percentage is going to be 75. 2/5 is my fraction. Again, I have 200 here. Divide 5 into 200. That's going to give me 40. But remember, you have to bring down the 0. And the 5 goes into 0 0 times. And that's going to give me 40%. And then the last one, here, we actually have to work it out, which is 10 into 3 or 30 or 300. 10 into 3 is 3. 3 times 10 is 30. Subtract that 0. Bring down the 0. 10 into 0 is 0. And you have to put that 0 on top to make it 30%.